Welcome into the Fantasy Football Diagnostics Podcast, where we provide you with your weekly diagnosis of everything fantasy football. Whether it's season-long leagues, dynasty, DFS, or sometimes even IDP, we got you covered all year long. Let's do it. Let's get to it. Welcome into the Fantasy Football Diagnostics Podcast. It is Tuesday, November 26, 2024. I'm your host, Jon Jeune, at the real Jon J _FF on X, Instagram, even trying a blue sky thing. The underscore is a hyphen. So if you want to give me a follow there as well, going to be learning that platform as well. But hopefully you guys had a good fantasy week in week 12. It was a mixed bag of results for me in terms of my personal fantasy leagues. So, trying to get back on track in week 13, Thanksgiving week. And that being said, just got to make sure I make the announcement now. No, I've been, I don't want to say teasing it because I haven't really been teasing it, but just talking to you guys that, have been listening for the last couple of weeks, watching for the last couple of weeks, that this Wednesday will be the matchup show. It won't be on Friday. It'll be live on Wednesday. Which is good news, right? Because it means you guys get it earlier. The live stream will be at 5 p.m. on Wednesday. I know that's the part that I had not settled in on yet. So 5 p.m. Wednesday, we will be live right here. And so, what does that change for us? Well, obviously we have 3 games on Thursday. So the matchup show will include those 3 games. We'll still get the starts of the week, so that doesn't really change. And then, we won't have a show on Friday, but for those that listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, whether you watch on Spotify, you watch the video on Spotify, or you watch it after the fact on YouTube, you'll have access to that video, throughout the weekend, right? So if you want to take a look at it on Wednesday or Thursday, or you want to, and you want to finish it on, Friday or Saturday or Sunday, whatever, suits you, feel free to do that, break it up. But it will be probably our longest episode of the year, probably somewhere around, over an hour. What is going on with the camera? Sorry, guys, if you are watching. I don't right now, network connection issue right now. So I I I I really do apologize for the technical difficulties. Less than ideal. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's StreamYard or if it's the browser or if it's all the above, but again, we're just gonna roll with what we got. So, um, yeah, as I was saying before, I was rudely interrupted by this network connection issue and my mic not working and whatnot. Um, there is a on Wednesday we will do a live stream at 5 p.m. Eastern time, and so you know, depending on whether what your schedule is like on Wednesday, whether you have off from work, whether you don't have off from work, whatever that looks like, tune in with us. Right, we're gonna be here going through all the different matchups, giving our starts of the week. I might even do some Thanksgiving themed things as well that day. So we're gonna get into all of it. So yeah, let's jump into the waiver show. Again, apologize for what just happened. But week 13 fantasy football waiver show, and let's jump into it. Um, if you're listening on podcast, you're probably like, what the hell happened? Regardless, whatever. We're here. I'm not talking about it anymore. Until maybe at the end of the show, and I apologize one more time. But let's jump into the waivers and let's talk about the quarterback position. Starting with Tennessee quarterback Will Levis, available in 88% of Yahoo leagues. Will Levis has quite the experience. The real life football, not great, but the fantasy production, solid, especially these last 3 weeks, with at least 16.6 fantasy points in each start. And now he's set to face off against a Washington defense that just allowed 18 fantasy points to Cooper Rush. So I know we talked about Washington not being a the doormat that they once were to start the year in recent weeks, but they have looked okay, just okay, I would say, these last couple weeks. So, this matchup against Will Levis, again, quite the experience. And with no teams on bye in week 13, I don't expect teams to have to go that low. Um, in the player pool for guys, a guy like a Will Levis, but you never know what somebody's situation is. Maybe they've been dealing with quarterback issues, and their whole league is holding on to quarterbacks, and they can't get a guy, or maybe um, you play in a deeper league, 14, 16 team leagues. Maybe you play in a 2 quarterback league, and Will Levis is out there available, and you're trying to figure out, hey, do I add this guy? I mean, if you're in a 2 quarterback league, you're probably forced to at this point add a Will Levis. But yeah, I like him this week, this upcoming matchup. Again, I will have all um, my rankings and things done by tomorrow's show at 5 p.m. So I could possibly give you guys more of a more clear idea of where I sit on a Will Levis if we end up discussing him in the matchup show, depending on where his ranking falls. But yeah, I not opposed to going to a guy like a Will Levis this week if need be. Again, deeper leagues, 2 quarterback leagues, things like that. Uh, Speaking of Cooper Rush, let's talk about Cooper Rush. And again, quarterback is weird, right? Because none of these guys in 12-team leagues with none of the bye weeks under normal circumstances am I going to want to play these guys? Am I going to feel the need to play these guys? But again, we'll talk about all that stuff when I take a closer look at the matchups tonight into tomorrow. So, but Cooper Rush, has back-to-back games with at least 17 fantasy points. The New York Giants defense has been susceptible to giving up fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks all season, and the weapons he's surrounded by, mainly CeeDee Lamb. If Jake Ferguson can go, but if not, then we have a Luke Schoonmaker. Um, so I think Rush can bring us another solid week potentially against this Giants defense on Thanksgiving. Next up is Carolina quarterback Bryce Young. Young is coming off his best performance this season against a tough Kansas City defense and is now set to face off against the Tampa Bay defense that has been one that we've been targeting all season. In deeper leagues, I think Young is definitely worth a look. Rounding out the quarterback position. Oh no, not rounding it out. Let's talk about Russell Wilson. And guys, I'm not in love with the idea of throwing Russell Wilson out here either. He's been in a bit of a slump in his last 2 games with just 1 touchdown pass after throwing 6 in his first 3 games. But Cincinnati's on deck, and they've allowed at least 24 fantasy points to an opposing quarterback in 3 of their last 4 games. Rounding out the quarterback position, let's talk about New England quarterback Drake May, available in 81% of Yahoo leagues. Drake May has been a safe option for most of the season with at least 17 fantasy points in 4 of the full 6 games that he's played. It's a combination of his legs as well as his willingness to throw the ball down the field. Indianapolis is not a scary matchup by any means, so definitely not afraid to go in May's direction if need be. And we got a couple of questions here. Mr. Skrilla says, I'm 5-7 and I have the Niners D. I need a new defense. Yeah, I would say you probably need a new defense too. One that is interesting, and I haven't, done my projections yet, so I don't know exactly where I sit with all the defenses. But just if I took a look at teams that are in good spots in terms of who are those teams that are favored, who are the teams that are have a decent matchup that might be available. Denver's been pretty hot. I don't know where they sit in terms of availability, but a team that is probably available and is going to have a solid terms of their spread, right? Is what I'm trying to say. But the Dallas Cowboys, they're completely different defense when Michael Parsons is out there. They've got the New York Giants on Thursday night, on Thanksgiving. So for me, that's a team that I look at and I'm like, okay, yeah, I can get into that, right? The Houston Texans, they play Jacksonville this week. The Seattle Seahawks play the Jets. And if you want to go Tampa Bay against Carolina, right? Those are options that I would take a look at. Green Bay, they've been solid all year as a defense. They've been pretty good. They do play Miami this week, but if somebody dropped them, they do provide a nice floor there for you as well, Mr. Skrilla. So hopefully that helps you out. Let's move on to the running back position. And we've got one running back that we'll actually talk about today, and that's Washington running back Jeremy McNichols, available in 99% of Yahoo leagues. Brian Robinson Jr. is dealing with an ankle injury, and with Austin Eckler, he's dealing with a concussion. So there's a possibility that neither one of these guys go on Sunday. And so it seems like McNichols might end up being a lead guy in the backfield here. The matchup's not great, as Tennessee has been a tough run defense, but volume and touchdown opportunity should help McNichols at least be an RB3 consideration in Week 13. Now, moving on to notable running backs that are available in 50% or above of Yahoo leagues. And let's start with Las Vegas running back Amir Abdullah. We talked about him on the matchup show. He ended up with a top 10 week here for us at the running back position, getting in the end zone as well against Denver. Now, Abdullah, he's matched up against Kansas City on Black Friday, And Abdullah is in a situation here where, we don't really know what the status is of Alexander Madison or Zamir White heading into Friday. So Amir Abdullah is a guy that you should probably, if you don't have him rostered already, you can roster him. And the great part about it is you'll get that clarity on Friday. Is he a guy that's going to end up with a ton of opportunities on the ground? No, only had 8 rush attempts on Sunday, but we expect him to be utilized through the air as a check down option in this pass game, especially in a game against Kansas City, where the Raiders will be, Vegas has the spread here sitting at 13.5 points. So as double digit underdogs, there should be a lot of pass attempts and a lot of dump off opportunities for Amir Abdullah. Jacksonville running back Tank Bigsby, he's available in 61% of Yahoo leagues. He just had the bye week, so he's probably dropped. He's also been injured these last couple weeks. So there's, that aspect of it as well. But Travis Etienne didn't really do anything that makes you think that he'll hold on to that job, for, that he should be able to hold on to that job, I should say. And with, the matchups coming up for Tank Bigsby, they're actually not half bad, right? I know that the Jets are mixed in there, which is a team that we like to target. But he's got Houston coming up this week, which is, just an okay matchup. Detroit, no, they just played Detroit. Tennessee, not a great matchup. But then he's got the Jets and the Raiders in week 15 and week 16. So there's a possibility that Tank Bigsby brings us back some value there. So not going to cost you much to add him to your roster and could end up, being a guy that helps you in this playoff push. And now I would pick him up and then you don't have to play him this week. You just kind of observe what his usage looks like, these next couple weeks, and then that'll help you make your decision about whether you want to play him in those other 2 matchups. Moving down the list, Trey Benson, Arizona running back Trey Benson, available in 73% of Yahoo leagues. Now, Benson, we talked about him in the matchup show, didn't really come through, but, again, I'll stick by what I said. The eye test is there. He definitely looks good. James Conner is, the lead back by a wide margin. Now, I don't think that's going to change without an injury, but Trey Benson is a guy that you got to have on your roster because, you never know what's going to happen. And I'd much rather have him on my roster now than have to burn a waiver priority or spend significant fab to acquire him. Same thing with Green Bay running back Emmanuel Wilson, right? Marshawn Lloyd, the rookie, he, again, is injured, had to get appendicitis after coming back from injured reserve. So he ends up on the physically unable to perform list, the PUP. And so Emmanuel Wilson is the true backup running back here behind Josh Jacobs. Once we saw Josh Jacobs leave that game Sunday against the Niners with what looks like a cramp, then Emmanuel Wilson immediately slotted in to take over that role there for the Green Bay Packers, and that's a good offense. That's one that I definitely want a piece of. And if Emmanuel Wilson, if Josh Jacobs decided tomorrow that he doesn't want to play football, Emmanuel Wilson would easily slot in as one of the top waiver wire acquisitions. So why not get him for free now, essentially, versus having to pay up later. And a lot of these guys that I'm going to talk about here on out are going to end up on that list. A guy that was on this list for that reason yesterday or last week rather, LA Chargers running back Gus Edwards, available in 73% of Yahoo leagues. He ends up in a situation where J.K. Dobbins, he left the game yesterday against the Baltimore Ravens with a knee injury. Gus Edwards was able to run for a touchdown there, but did only rush for 11 yards. He will be, I think, is the primary running back. I do expect it to go to sort of a committee here for the Chargers, but Gus Edwards is going to end up being the primary running back if J.K. Dobbins is forced to miss any significant time here. So definitely worth an ad. Not the most exciting, but when we're looking for these guys, sometimes it's just who's going to get an opportunity in the end zone, who's going to see some volume, and it looks like Gus Edwards is seeing that. Seattle running back Zach Charbonnet, available in 59% of Yahoo leagues. Again, has no standalone value. Is purely going to be, one of those situations where if something happens to Kenneth Walker, then Charbonnet ends up with, a magnitude of work there. So, I would look at him that way. Atlanta running back Tyler Algier, available 69% of Yahoo leagues. Same thing with him. Just the primary running back to Bijan, primary backup to Bijan Robinson. So, worth an ad, especially if you're the Bijan Robinson manager, just to add that security going down the stretch. Miami running back Jalen Wright, available 94% of Yahoo leagues. He actually supplanted Raheem Mostert as the number 2 running back behind Devon Achane. So, that's one rung up the ladder closer, which actually I think would really justify the roster spot now. I think before he was one of those guys where it was like, all right, let's pick him up if an injury happens, let's drop him, and we cycle through it that way. But now, as being the number 2 running back, legitimately, I think it's worth the actual roster spot if you can bear it. Buffalo running back Ray Davis, available in 84% of Yahoo leagues. Again, thought that he would have a standalone role after his week 5 game where he filled in for James Cook, but that has not happened. But besides the point, he is the primary backup running back behind James Cook. And we've already seen that if something were to happen, if he needs to be the full, if he needs to see the full allotment of work, that he'll be productive in that situation. Next up, Chicago running back Roschon Johnson, available in 72% of Yahoo leagues. I mean, he's like, he really is just a touchdown vulture at this point. So he has some standalone value in that sense, but you're literally just hoping he scores a touchdown, and then if he doesn't, then not great for you, because the stat line's going to be like 2 carries for 1 yard, no touchdown, something like that. So Roschon is a guy that he does have some, that built-in upside, whereas if something happens to DeAndre Swift, he will end up being the primary running back. But again, has some standalone value based on his, touchdown, his usage around the goal line and probability of scoring touchdowns. So then there's Cam Akers, Minnesota running back, available in 76% of Yahoo leagues. Again, we talked about Cam Akers quite a bit. Last week was his really first down week, and his really his first week of little to no usage. But has the upside as something happens to Aaron Jones, where he'll end up being the primary running back there. Cleveland running back Jerome Ford, available 59% of Yahoo leagues. Again, primary backup to Nick Chubb, who finally had a productive fantasy game there. And Jerome Ford does have some, he is the pass catching back for Cleveland. So there's that aspect as well. So there's a possibility of some standalone value dependent on the game script. Just a couple more guys here. LA Rams running back Blake Corum, available in 86% of Yahoo leagues, 0 standalone value, purely just a security blanket there for Kyren Williams managers, or those that want to leverage the potential Kyren Williams demise. And then last but not least, Denver running back Audric Estime, available in 73% of Yahoo leagues. I mean, what a fall from grace for Estime. Seemed like he had taken over the lead role, and then now ends up in a situation here where we can't even tell who the primary running back is in Denver. Like, do we even want the running back in Denver? Is it just Jaleel McLaughlin? I'm not entirely sure, but I would avoid this backfield if I could. I would roster the guys, right? The Estimes and the Javonte Williams and even a Jaleel McLaughlin, but I would not necessarily be starting them until like there's something that gives us a bit more clarity. But I don't even know how you'd have confidence starting any of these guys right now. Mr. Skrilla has another question. I have Allen, Mahomes, and Purdy. I need to trade or drop one. I would trade Mahomes. Just had his best game. Um, there, I don't really. I mean, Mahomes hasn't been, the Patrick Mahomes that that we've. I mean, most people drafted him to be. He's got matchups against the Raiders, the Chargers, Cleveland, Houston, and then Pittsburgh. Um, he's just has 2 games all season, uh, 3 games all season, scoring 18 or more fantasy points. Um, in terms of QB1 finishes, I think he has just 2 all year. So yeah, I probably would be most. I say trade Mahomes because you could probably get the most. Um, Allen, you probably get the most value for. I don't want to trade Allen. I want Allen on my team. Um, Mahomes, you could probably get away with trading because he has obviously the name value, and then Purdy, I think, would be a solid backup, assuming he's obviously healthy. His schedule is kind of crap though, so maybe you trade Purdy because that schedule is not great. But I don't know how many people. I don't know if you can extract any real value from Purdy. Um, or maybe and I don't know what the waivers look like, but maybe your backup option is there on waivers, instead of one of these guys, because maybe you trade both of them. I don't know how many people are. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily trade for a quarterback unless I'm getting like a Josh Allen or a Jaden Daniels or Lamar Jackson, somebody who can like really take my team over the top because they have some dynamic running ability. Yeah, that would really be the only situation I'd see myself trading for a quarterback. Let's move on to wide receiver position, and let's talk about Devon Vele, available in 95% of Yahoo leagues. Vele has been he's finished as a wide receiver 2 in 2 of his last 3 games, scoring double-digit fantasy points in all 3 games during that span. He's seen his target and yardage trend up in each one of those games, catching 6 passes for 80 yards on 9 targets in his most recent game in Week 12. Those are all season highs for the rookie. He's tied to Bo Nix, which is, Nix is definitely hot right now and set to face off against a Cleveland defense that gives up big plays to wide receivers. So if you need wide receiver help, Vele is definitely in consideration for me this week. Moving on to Buffalo wide receiver Keon Coleman, available in 54% of Yahoo leagues. Coleman has been out with a wrist injury since Week 10, but Buffalo is coming back from the bye, and it's possible he might be ready to go. But prior to those games, prior to suffering that injury, rather, in Week 9 against Miami, Coleman had back-to-back top 16 finishes, seeing 7 targets in each of those games with at least 125 yards or a touchdown and scoring no less than 16 and a half PPR points. Coleman seemed to be on his way to being a focal point in the Buffalo offense, and the matchups the next few weeks definitely are promising here. So take a look at your waiver wire. Coleman, some people might have held on to Coleman. Some people did not. So depends on your league and maybe how savvy some of these people in your fantasy football league are. Moving on to the next name on this list, New England wide receiver Demario Douglas, available in 69% of Yahoo leagues. There isn't a ton of upside to Douglas's game, but he's seen no less than 5 targets in his last 4 games and has scored no less than 9 PPR points. He's has just 1 wide receiver 3 finish during that span, but sometimes you need a guy with a safe floor, and Douglas can definitely provide that. Moving on to the next guy on this list, Carolina wide receiver Adam Thielen, available in 75% of Yahoo leagues. Thielen saw 4 targets in his first game back, which he turned into 57 receiving yards. He only played on 61% of the snaps, but could see an increased workload in Week 13, 1 more week removed from the hamstring injury. And the matchup here this week is tantalizing as he's ready to face off against the Tampa Bay secondary that we've definitely targeted all year. Next up is Washington wide receiver Noah Brown, available in 90% of Yahoo leagues. Brown is coming off a 10-target game, which led the Commanders in Week 12. In fact, Noah Brown leads all Commanders players in targets with 27 over their last 4 games. That's 10 more than star wide receiver Terry McLaurin. And now the matchup coming up against Tennessee is definitely a tough one. But with Eckler possibly out on this Sunday, there might be some more pass catching opportunities for other players, Noah Brown included. Moving on to New Orleans wide receiver Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and he's available in 75% of Yahoo leagues. And things, it gets scary. It gets scary when you bring up Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and we start to put our trust in him. And he pulls the rug right out from under us. We've been here before for sure, and it doesn't help that he's tied to a quarterback that often does the same thing. And Derek Carr makes for a very volatile situation. But if you need help, there are scarier places to go, in my opinion. And the matchup here is a juicy one. Coming into week 12, the LA Rams have allowed the 4th most PPR points to opposing wide receivers over their last 3 games. So all it takes is one big play from MVS here, and we are laughing to the bank. So I understand any trepidation, but sometimes we just got to do something dirty and nasty, and that means starting Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Moving on to Carolina wide receiver Xavier Legette, available in 63% of Yahoo leagues. I'm not really in love with the role that he's playing, but the matchup this week is quite stellar. If you need a flyer this week, definitely worse places to look than the first-round pick out of South Carolina, as he's set to face off against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I'm all in on the Carolina passing offense this week. Again, I have not done my projections. I will take a look at that and talk to you guys about that tomorrow. But Carolina wide receiver David Moore available in 100% of Yahoo leagues. And Moore has been out there running routes for the Panthers. And just now it led to something of any value, as he saw 10 targets in week 12, scoring 20.1 PPR points. And now this could very well be fool's gold. And typically, I wouldn't even bring up a player like Moore. I mean, we've had players like Moore that fit Moore's profile have, big games, and I don't bring them up unless it happens in consecutive weeks, because, we've seen this before where a guy will just randomly have a 10-target game, and then you go back to that well, and then it's dry. However, this matchup against Tampa Bay is a nice one, as we mentioned, with Thielen and Legette. So if he continues to be out there, you have to think that some passes will be thrown his way. We'll see. We'll see. If he ends up being someone that's worthy of a play, I will bring him up tomorrow. But just keep him on your short list there. Moving on to the tight end position, let's talk about Washington tight end Zach Ertz, available in 52% of Yahoo leagues. Again, there's nothing super exciting about going to Ertz, but he's reliable, deserves a spot on rosters for teams looking for help at the position this week. And especially with Eckler being out, potentially there's even more targets in the short area of the field that could go to a player like Ertz. Next up, Hunter Henry, also available in 52% of Yahoo leagues. Henry has at least 5 targets in 6 of his last 7 games, scoring at least 9 PPR points in each of those 6 games. He's a solid option at the position and faces a good matchup in an Indianapolis defense that entering week 12 allowed the 8th most PPR points to the position. Moving on to Cole Kmet, available in 53% of Yahoo leagues. And proceed with caution, because we've seen this before from Kmet. But the way the tight end landscape is these days, I might be willing to take a flyer on him. His big games do tend to correlate, coincide with increased passing volume for Caleb Williams. But in a matchup against Detroit here, you might just see some of that increased passing volume, as Detroit, I believe, 10.5 point underdogs here. Or sorry, Detroit's 10.5 point favorite. So Chicago 10.5 point dogs on the road in the Dome. So probably a lot of pass attempts. I would be willing to prognosticate that there would probably be a large amount of pass attempts, a large amount of volume there for Caleb Williams, which should lead to, possibly increased volume here for Cole Kmet. And then moving on, yeah, we're gonna do it, guys. We're totally gonna do it. Uh, Noah Gray, Kansas City tight end Noah Gray, available in 96% of Yahoo leagues. And again, I guess we're doing this back-to-back games with 2 touchdowns apiece, but also targets of 5 and 4 respectively. But I don't think we're just chasing some fantasy points here. He seems to be a real part of the offense, especially if you look over his snap totals over these last 4 weeks. They're representative of someone who is actually a piece of the offense. I mean, even last week played more snaps than DeAndre Hopkins and Juju Smith-Schuster. And you might be like, oh well, John, they were 10-point favorites against Carolina. That was garbage time, but it wasn't, right? Because that game ended up being a close one down to the wire, a 3-point win for the Chiefs. So and it's not something that's just happened one time, right? This is something that if you look over these last 4 weeks, his snap totals are up there, sometimes even with, playing more more snaps than any other skill position player not named Travis Kelce, right? So this has been a theme for the last several weeks. It's just a situation here where the targets are actually following some of that snap usage, and he's being productive with those targets. And it's not like you can point to the Kansas City Chiefs and say, yeah, that's their clear number 2 pass option behind Travis Kelce, right? At times we thought it would be Juju Smith-Schuster, we thought it'd be Xavier Worthy, we thought it'd be DeAndre Hopkins, but it has not consistently been anyone else. So is it Noah Gray? I don't know, but we're willing to take shots on some of these other guys at positions like wide receiver, where there's a plethora of wide receivers across the league that we can go to, but there's not many tight ends that we can go to, and not many that are attached to Patrick Mahomes as their quarterback or Andy Reid as their play caller. So yeah, that's my Noah Gray pitch. Now we'll take some questions. We have one more question from Michael Paris. What do you think about Laporta and Kraft? Yeah, Laporta. I talked about Laporta in the matchup show begrudgingly, because nothing came of that in terms of the fantasy production. I still think he's a talented player, right? I definitely do, and I don't think the issues that we're seeing right now with Laporta is a function of talent. I think it's more a function of consistent opportunities. I mean, he did see 6 targets on Sunday, which is back-to-back games with 6 targets. So that's actually a good thing, I think. So if the targets keep coming, then I think Laporta is a talented enough player where he'll start making making use of those targets. The opportunity this week against Chicago coming into week 12 was allowed the 21st most PPR points to the tight end position. I'm necessarily not afraid to go to Laporta. Chicago, Chicago didn't really, they obviously held Tucker Kraft to 0 points the week before. And TJ Hawkinson, believe had a solid day this past week. Let me just confirm that. So I'm not necessarily afraid to go into the teeth. Yeah. TJ Hawkinson did just great against Chicago, 7 for 9 for a 114. So it's there, it's capable, right? With Laporta. Now with Kraft has a good matchup this week. I believe Tucker Kraft is playing against Miami, so that matchup is pretty good there as well. They allowed a touchdown to Austin Hooper. They allowed a bunch of targets, catches to Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper. Again, Kraft has been a little touchdown dependent, but some of these opportunities, may continue to come this week against the Miami Dolphins. Millie C asking, Engram Andrews or Disley rest of season. Mm, I really like Disley's situation, right? He's consistently involved in the offense. He's tied to Justin Herbert. Um, the schedule is actually pretty nice if you look at Disley's schedule. I mean, Atlanta, Kansas City, Tampa Bay. That Tampa Bay matchup is beautiful. Then Denver and New England. So I really do like Disley's schedule rest of season. Mark Andrews has picked it up a lot over these last, I would say even since that Tampa Bay game a while back, or the Washington game actually. Yeah, I mean Andrews looks. I mean his box score looks great, right? I mean since that Washington game, I mean, you can even go back to Cincinnati, 9.5 points. He only has two of the 9 games. He only has two with less than 9 points, right? So I think if you're looking for some upside here, um, yeah, there's definitely a case to be made for Mark Andrews, the touchdown ability, right? I mean, he started for the first 5 weeks, he had no touchdowns, but over the last 7 weeks, he scored 6 touchdowns. So, uh, you know, that I think for me is going to be the thing that tips Andrews over the edge for me. Evan Ingram, he's fine, right? But do you want to attach yourself to Mac Jones for the rest of the season? What I will say about Andrews, he hasn't had the bye week yet, so there's that. Um, yeah, I mean, Ingram is like a safe option, I would think. But being tied to Mac Jones doesn't really excite me not one bit. But that's a good problem to have, to choose between those three tight ends. But I would probably rank them Andrews, Disley, Ingram is how I would rank them. And maybe you make a trade. Alex Smith, not really fantasy related, but do you think Daniel Jones could succeed with a better run franchise, similar to what Sam Darnold is doing? Mm. That's tough because I think the answer is like really somewhere in the middle, right? It's like, did the Giants fail Daniel Jones or did Daniel Jones fail the Giants, right? And I think the answer is really somewhere in the middle. Is Daniel Jones as bad as he's looked given the situation he's been in with the Giants? No, I don't think he's as bad as he's looked, right? We've seen Daniel Jones have some success at times. I think that if the offensive line situation is really good, if the weapons around him are really good, right? In terms of a number one receiver, and he's got a running back, quality tight end. I think Daniel Jones could be a productive NFL quarterback, right? Where he's Daniel Jeremiah and why can't I remember uh Charles. Why can't I remember his name? NFL Network guys. Well, they often talk about tractors and trailers, right? Or is the quarterback a tractor? Or is he a trailer? Is he the one carrying the team, hence the tractor, or is he being carried by the team, hence the trailer, right? And to me, Daniel Jones is very clearly a trailer. He's not going to be one that uplifts the team around him and uplifts the offense. Charles Davis is the name I was thinking of. I don't know why I couldn't think of that name. Charles Davis, Daniel Jeremiah. But yeah, with those guys, with guys like Daniel Jones, like he's very clearly a trailer to me, where the situation around him has to be really good, right? And that's what Sam Darnold is as well, right? He's the trailer, right? He's not the tractor. So Sam Darnold having a lot of success because he's surrounded by a Justin Jefferson. He's surrounded by a Jordan Addison. He's surrounded by a TJ Hawkinson. The offensive line play is really good. He's got a good play caller in Kevin O'Connell. I mean, I'm a Jets fan. I've seen Sam Darnold out there with guys like a Jermaine Kearse and a Jamison Crowder, and his number one tight end is Trayvon Wesco, right? Like I've seen these games from these situations from Sam Darnold. Like his left tackle is Chuma Edoga, right? Like Sam Darnold was not in a good situation, and now you look at Sam Darnold in a good situation, and it's like, yeah, well, he's doing great, and it's like I very well could have told you that that could have happened, and I think there's something similar there with Daniel Jones, right? Like, um, I think the Giants just completely fumbled the situation around him, right? And then they doubled down on their mistake by committing a ton of money to Daniel Jones and not foregoing the ability to build the team out, right? Letting guys like Xavier McKinney walk, letting a guy like Saquon walk, right? Even the decision years ago to trade Odell Beckham Jr., right? Like to Cleveland. Um, they chose, I don't even remember the coach at the time, Pat Shermer. They chose essentially Pat Shermer, who they moved on to fire the year after to move away from Odell Beckham, their franchise player at the time. So, yeah, to answer your question, yes, I think he could succeed with a better run franchise. But I think the situation has to be good, right? Like, I don't think, if you try to think of a team, like if you put him in Pittsburgh, right? Like, is he gonna do better in Pittsburgh? Yeah, he'll do better in Pittsburgh. But, would his situation overall be better? Maybe not, right? Um, I think there's still some warts on that team where there's you're not really fully going to uplift the quarterback, right? I think they did a good job like hiding um sorry, they did a good job, hiding like a Justin Fields, and Russell Wilson is doing the best he can, in that offense. But I think they would need some pieces to support a guy like a Daniel Jones. I know that's a long-winded answer, but yeah, that's kind of how I'm feeling this morning. Millie C, do you think Lawrence will play? I have a Week 14 bye replacement uh for Nixon Richardson. Yeah, you need a Week 14 bye replacement, I think is what you're trying to get at. Do I think he will play? That's a good question. It's like, who do they even play in Week 14? Do they play the Jets? I think they play the Jets. I think it's possible that he plays, right? But I like, would they even want to risk Trevor Lawrence and his health in a lost season? I know Trevor Lawrence is the type of guy that it's like, no, I'm playing, tough guy football, which I think you love from your quarterback. But I would normally in this situation look to guys, folks on the fantasy space that are well more versed in some of the injury analysis than myself. And so, JM Thrive PT, Jeff Mueller, he's one of the better uh, injury and injury analysts that there are out there, and he says that he said on back on November 14th he thinks that there's a chance to return Week 13 post bye. Comes with re-injury risk if he falls on the left side. So that's what he thinks there. Michael Paris, what do you think would have a who do you think would have a better day? DeAndre Swift, Tyrone Tracy, or Waddle? Mm, that's a question that is tough for me to answer, at this exact moment in time, just because I haven't again done my matchup show prep yet or my projections yet. But off the cuff, I would have to say the Giants played Dallas. That's a really good matchup. Tracy, I know, has been tough to trust in certain spots, but the matchup here against Dallas is a really nice one. Um, Waddle plays Green Bay. That matchup it's okay. And then DeAndre Swift plays Detroit, where that matchup is terrible. But you got the revenge game narrative. DeAndre Swift, the volume has been there. Um, I would go. I would go. My gut wants to tell me. My gut wants to say Tracy, and then Swift, and then Waddle. But I also wouldn't be surprised if my projections had it Swift, Tracy, Waddle. I know Waddle just had his big game. He definitely is prone to doing that. I just can't trust Waddle at this exact moment right now. So he's going to be third for me no matter what. Again, had a big game, best game of the year. But yeah, I'm just going to need to see it again from Jalen Waddle. All right, y'all. That is all I have today. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for the questions. Thanks for being with us. Sorry again for the snafu earlier today in regards to the connection issue and the mic going out and the camera going out. But I persevered. You guys persevered. You stayed with me. So I appreciate that. And yeah, we will see y'all tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern, as we discussed the waiver show or the matchup show for all 16 games this week and get into starts of the week. Have a good one. See you later and peace.